Yeah, so thanks to the DAC committee for organizing this. Yeah, really glad to share some of the lessons. Um, so I take it that most of the participants here are undergrads, and yeah, I've tailored the presentation. Um, Also, yeah, for reasons for the company, I also cannot share too much about how we uh, do things in terms of building the AI, but I can share my lessons on these 8 topics. So, yeah. So to start out with the background, I did my computer engineering degree at NUS and I graduated in 2019. Before that, I had done a software engineering internship at a startup in 2017, where through the NOC program for people who want to go into entrepreneurship. And there I met a classmate who was doing a one-to-one tuition matching platform. And I decided to help out and eventually joined as co-founder. So in 2019, we launched another product for managing tuition centers. And then when the pandemic hit in early 2020, we saw that as an opportunity to expand our product offering to an online assessment platform where students can um, submit homework or assessments. And then using that data, teachers are able to go in and analyze strengths and weaknesses, as well as they helped out with some productivity tools like auto grading using AI. So, the key things you need to know about my background and how that's going to affect how I present to you these lessons is that I have a bachelor's degree, not a master's or a PhD, and my internship was not AI related. So my AI related experience before starting on this product were 2 AI modules in deep neural networks and computer vision. And also I have an Instagram page to showcase my hobby for AI generated art. It's fairly popular. It has about 600 followers. If you want to follow it, I've added in the handle. Um, so yeah, technical degree, a few relevant modules, and a hobby. Not your typical AI startup CTO experience, but I'll show you how we've managed to navigate so far, and what milestones you need to reach so that the product can keep becoming mature at a pace that is useful for your users. So the first thing is, does my product really need AI? And since the product is an online assessment platform, we can have a little pop quiz here uh, to ask yourself, what is your goal among these 3 options? Injecting AI into a problem to solve it. B, providing your users value by whatever means necessary. Or C, using AI as a buzzword to attract funding and easy sales to your startup. So yeah, just to highlight, your goal should be the second, which is providing your users value by whatever means necessary. Ethics and laws applying, of course. So to answer this, or to address this goal as a startup founder, in tech or in any other space, what does that mean? So something you can ask as a follow-up question is this AI feature my hypothesized hair on fire stopper? So to give you a quick intro on what I mean by a hair on fire stopper, most startups should look for, hold on. I think yes, I've slide here. So it's just a general startup advice. To find people with their hair on fire, you can. I've added in a lovely blog link by Y Combinator for reaching product market fit But the basic analogy is that if you look at someone whose hair is on fire and you handed them a brick, they would still grab it and try to hit themselves to put the fire out. So basically, you need to find problems so dire and pressing that users are willing to try your half-baked version 1 imperfect solutions. And that is often what your AI feature will be, because one thing that it feeds on is data, and you won't have a lot of fine-tuned or localized data when you're first starting out. So yeah, is my AI feature the hair on fire stopper? Well, if yes, then it's time to crank out a quick low-code demo to give just an idea of usage. You don't need to immediately, um, start coding right away. You just need some validation using little to no code as possible. So here's a pure front-end prototype. And it's just to give the teachers an idea of what the outputs would be like. And this was the very first version. It's improved past then, but this just to show you how it was when we started. And yeah, so these are the student answers for this particular question. And yeah, this demo does not use the AI yet, but it helped us get us some pretty quick validation and also served as a good conversation starter, which is what you want to be doing at the very start. So, okay, so that was in the case where we hypothesized that that AI feature was the hair on fire stopper. Eventually, you will meet other problems for where the more AI-based use cases can be encountered to support your other features that are not necessarily AI. So one example is data collection itself or data analytics. Can AI then be used to enhance your non-AI features? As that's just an example. So one way of spotting problems is by looking at which features your users use the most. One analytics platform I'd highly recommend was Mixpanel, and it helped us out a lot to see which pages were the most popular. And of course, it was the analytics dashboard in our case. So we immediately started looking at how we can enhance that further and so on and so on. And another book I would recommend is, yeah, the MOM test for this particular topic. And so, okay, so now if you're ready to code and you've received the validation you've received, you needed with your low code prototype, you can, a very quick way to get you started with a code-based prototype is to start looking for templates or existing template implementations and then fine tune it. And then that would eventually work up to a proper rewrite at a later stage, hopefully when you've fundraised or started generating profit. One of your best friends at this point will be Papers with Code. It certainly was mine. And yeah, it really got our prototype, our code-based version 1 prototype out in a month and integrated with our platform. There were a few hidden gems I found. A good rule of thumb I eventually learned was look for GitHub repos with 10 to 100 stars. Larger repos, you have to have a few more criteria for evaluating, actually. It was something surprising, but it's way more stable in general. But if you encounter any issues, the developers will be much slower in responding than with the 10 to 100 star repos. Yeah. But one caveat would be in NLP. So in 2017, if some of you haven't heard, that was a huge transformer architecture revolution. And a bunch of large companies, the FANGs, their GitHubs now have a very good large model implementations that are over 1,000 stars. If you're in the NLP space, I would definitely recommend you checking these out for your use case, and then tuning it for your use case. For computational resources, this will be another bottleneck after you've sorted out your implementation architecture and code general. I would recommend Google Colab. That is how, if you guys have heard of AI Dungeon 2, that is how they started out, as well as a few other startups I can send you links to. If you're a uni student, or if you have an established startup, I would recommend you go for the AWS Activate package, and you'd get a bunch of free credits and then you can use the AWS service SageMaker. This particular service has a lot of out-of-box benefits, like the retraining pipeline and API endpoint deployment. It's pretty stable on production. So for the next topic, it would just be prototyping. So now that you've got a code-based a model running on your environment of choice, you should work towards a demo where users can upload their own data, because people are not really impressed with high accuracy demo on the startup's own data. And so yeah, eventually work towards a demo where users can input in their own data and see how the model interacts with that. So the bottleneck after that would be, data that is relevant to maybe your country or your particular use case or your users in terms of personalization. Because the data before this stage, you would most likely have gotten it from open source or pre-trained models by those large companies who had GitHubs I showed you earlier. So for data that is more relevant, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem again. So one way would be to defeat this is to create workflows that incentivize users instead of using the accuracy as the incentive. You can also create good workflows that incentivize users. And how to create good workflows would be to keep in mind that you need to demonstrate that you should, that there are a few ways you can provide the users value in return for their data. So for example, in a particular product, one set of users could be children, they value entertainment. Another set are adults and they value productivity. Another set are people who want information. And the ultimate goal for a lot of products would be to, at the end, where they gather all the data and process it, would be to give users instructions on how to improve whatever it is that they're trying to do with your product. So these are some 4 data collection hacks that I've learned so far. It's synthetic data. So you can have rules-based or ML techniques to create data that looks similar to what you already have access to. The second would be you can hire data labelers. A lot of startups hire overseas data labelers. There are also quite a few services that you can look for that handles this for you, and you just have to give in a rule set and they will handle it. The third would be open source data. And you would find this with the papers with code and GitHub links. And the fourth one is a bit more interesting. It's clickbait, where you target your user segment with maybe surveys where they have the opportunity to be entertained or find out where they stand among other people. And they would give you that data in exchange for the collective aggregated data. Um, uh, if you've ever seen those viral posts where, oh, you won't believe this PSLE question that stumped 90% of students, it would be things like that. Oh, yeah, it would be things like that. And then people would be incentivized to maybe answer the question and you would gather that data. Um, so nowadays, we get the feel that you definitely cannot ride on the AI buzzword alone, and you definitely have to be grounded in the startup principles of what, why now, why us, and how we're doing so far. What is your product specifications and um, how you address user needs. The why is maybe your personal philosophy and company vision. The why now is why haven't people done this before? If they haven't done this before, maybe you're too ahead of the curve. If they have done this before, then what are you doing that is different or better? And why are you able to do it now? Maybe there's some recent technological developments. The why us is definitely hinged on credibility. And that's one challenge for a technical co-founder with my background is credibility. So I've had to do quite a bit of work in self-learning, but not only that, also networking with people who are way more into the AI space, including academics and people in the industry. And hopefully they'll let you lend their name as part of your advisory board, and it will make your product way more credible. And how we're doing so far is what we've just discussed, which is how you provide your users value. So for the AI space, these two bolded questions are a little more important, the why now. Usually it is the case that there's been a recent revolution or development, as we saw in NLP. The why us is, yes, you need strong advisors if you yourself are not extremely, you yourself are not very highly educationally qualified. If you're in uni, congrats, you've got some really good access to your professors. Just push yourself to reach out to them, introduce your project, and there's a good chance at least one will be interested, believe me. And online AI communities and events to find like-minded people like this. In real life events is where I met a lot of my technically minded friends before the pandemic. But because of COVID, online events and communities like this are definitely the best thing, next best thing. For skilling and hiring, after your prototypical stage model, you would definitely need to move it to more mature infrastructure, like cloud servers or better scaling API gateways and better hardware for your development and local training if applicable. If you're funded or profit generating at this point, you should be. You should definitely hire people who are more knowledgeable than you, but definitely keep up so that it's simply not annoying for them to talk to you about what they're working on. Also, I would recommend keeping AI modules and backend APIs in-house as much as possible at seed stage. But it definitely depends on the resources you have. And to be honest, I might change my mind. I'm still internally debating myself about this. Yeah. And yeah, that's it for my presentation. I Let me know if you think I have missed out a few details in the question and answer. We're not hiring interns at the moment, but you should connect with me on LinkedIn. And when we do, I will put out a post and you can message me with your CV at that point. It should be, from what I estimate, it should be around mid-year. Yeah. And that's it for my presentation. Aditya?
All right. Thanks a lot, Shwetha. It was quite insightful.
Where can one learn about AI? It depends on your background. If it's your degree is related to computer science, you can take a few electives. But if it's not related, I would say start out with the online course on Coursera. That's where I learned about AI when I was in high school before I had access to university level resources. If you want to learn about implementation, yeah, you would take the technical courses. If you just like to learn how to apply it, and then maybe you're confident you can find a technical person to implement your ideas, then you should definitely read up about case studies of startups that have implemented AI into their products. Um, Let me know if you want me to elaborate any more on that question. Do you think masters are important or useful in the industry? That's a heavily debated topic. I would say it can be useful, but it's depending on your startup, actually. There are two types of startups in this space. It would be tech-enabled and deep tech. So ours would be a tech-enabled startup where existing AI technology enables the product's usefulness or value, and it's up to the technical team to implement mostly. And with a deep tech startup in the AI space, their technical team is mostly researching and inventing. And then the next stage would be implementation and integrating. So I think a master's or a PhD would be very important for deep tech startups where you're more doing research and you need to know more of the underlying principles instead of hacking your way to a prototype and then hiring ML engineers to make it better. So basically for tech enabled, I wouldn't say it is as important, but it can be useful. For deep tech, I would say it's very important. Is converting research papers into implementation code considered useful from a resume perspective? Yes, I would consider that a very good experience, especially if you're able to um, reach close to the results that were found in the paper. I know sometimes, I know there's a problem in with papers being published where, someone tries to replicate it with the code that they put out and then the results are nowhere near what the paper was. But I still think you can learn a lot from doing that. And if you do find your results getting close to what the paper is, that's even better. Yeah, I would consider that a good thing to put on your resume. Yeah. Does Learnseekers hire get international students as interns? Yes, we do. I think, yeah, about 40% of our interns were international students. Yeah, quite a few. And yeah, we have a SIM intern with us right now. And that's how I think that's how I got into this event. Mm, we're pretty diverse. I think a lot of the team is born in different countries. Yeah. Mm. What projects do you look for in a resume? Depends on the role. For software engineering, yeah, it would be usually full stack projects. Like I do consider hackathons relevant sometimes, but it doesn't showcase how well you can create code that is meant to be expanded on. So the best project for software engineering would be FYP level or internship level, where you've worked on it for a few months. For data analytics, it would be like a portfolio of some of the visualizations you've done. And sorry, that's just data visualization. For data analytics, it would be uh, yeah, also internship or FYP level, or actually even side projects where you've um, transformed a lot of open source, large amounts of open source data into a good digestible report. For machine learning, yeah, it would be converting research papers to code or having um, a hobby like I do with the AI generated art or something you've worked on for a while, basically. Um, the best projects I would say would be where you have many users and definitely where paying users. So like a startup attempt. Yeah. Because from a purely technical perspective, it's there's a lot more pressure. Yeah. Languages do you think are important to know? On the front end side, I would say for machine learning, data analytics. So I think, yeah, Python and JavaScript framework, front-end framework is a killer combo. But other than that, since you can code out backend servers using JavaScript or using Node.js, um, uh, some alternative backend languages that startups like are Rails, Laravel, Django, which is Ruby, PHP, and Python. Yeah, the ones I mentioned just now, but in the order would be Python, JavaScript. Yeah, those are the two most important. What areas in deep learning are Learnseeker looking to get interns in NLTK, computer vision? We would eventually like both, but we are not using deep learning at this stage. Let me think. But I would, yeah, be more interested in NLTK, most interested in NLTK at this point. Yeah. Mm, But actually, if you have, I think a few hackathons cover like handwriting recognition, and those things would be interesting as well um, if you've had experience in that. Yeah. In NLTK, what are you looking for? Text summarization, translation? Currently, it would be sentiment analysis, and I think the other task would be called semantic similarity. Yeah. Not yet summarization, but it is definitely a use case that we can look at. Uh, but yeah, not yet implemented. Our main AI use case is in grading open-ended answers. So yeah, and also yeah, mainly grading open-ended answers.
Right. If there are no more questions, then we really thank you for giving us this presentation, Shweta. It
Okay,
was insightful into the industry,
no
and like
problem. Yep.
yeah, we learned a lot, like in general, about how machine learning industries work and like the skills we may require to get into like startups regarding machine learning.
All right. Yep. Thanks for having me on. Hope it was useful and looking forward to the some connections on LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
All right, thank you very much. Really appreciated the talk. Thank you. All right, this will be so for the rest of the participants. This was the end of the industry talks. Now, for the people project participating in the project series, we'll have our last session of the DAC Data Fest on Friday. So we'll be seeing everybody there.